Acres in southern Colorado, fantastic mountain views, hunting, fishing, and camping, $9,995 with only $99 down and owner financing, 719-231-2025. Colorado, 5 mountain acres, must sell, fantastic views, hunt, fish, outdoor paradise, owner financed, $300 down and low monthly payments, 1-888-909-8115.
Yeah, same question.
Well, I'm sorry, could you repeat it?
Sure.
So those are excellent opportunities to jump, or you could just get a 70-acre home site, tremendous views, electric, $75,000 in Lavetta, Colorado, 719-598-7941. Bob Schilling actually wins in spite of him not getting the public chieftain endorsement. Mainly whoever the Republican rag endorsed, they got elected, but Tommy Farrell was not able to take the victory in District 1. Bob Schilling took the victory, so I guess now Peter Roper's got to, turn right around and be like, I'm sorry, Mr. Schilling, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. We were just, you know how it is. Please, sir, please give me some headlines and comments and stories. So that's an interesting dynamic there. So Bob Schilling did get some media publicity with the recycling center, but I guess it wasn't the chieftain, it was the TV station. So I don't know if it was KKTV or KOAA. Those are the only two that seem to pick up anything around here, but they barely do it. Very sparingly, very, very limitedly. If there's bloodshed, they'll cover that, but for the most part, they don't really cover us at all. So we need media. We need some fair, non-biased. And there's no bark of dogs around when you get all those acreage. When you get all that space, you can get a peace of mind. You can have a safe place to store your stuff. You won't be robbed all the time. An agrarian society is a civilized society. I would say that it was a huge win for the establishment, for the status quo. Everything's going to basically stay the exact same. There's going to be very little change, very little tiny changes whatsoever that the establishment had already pre-approved. Noraki wanted Dennis Flores. Dennis Flores, I would say Mark Aliff and Larry Atencio would be the top 3 runners for the president of city council. Whoever becomes the president, that would be the next major decision by this new city council. We no longer have the Noraki Azad court. Now we're going to have the what Azad court. So Azad's going to be in there for at least another year, right? Assuming I don't win. But why would you assume that? Let's assume I do win. So we're going to keep a city manager style government, and if you want a mayor, then you're going to have to get a charter convention to do it legally. Let's put this train back on the rails, unless you guys are a bunch of, do we got a runaway criminal government? Is that what's happening? We have a runaway criminal government. They started build this house upon sand, and they're just going to keep on. Then he points out he wants unbridled oversight, unbridled transparency, unbridled. So without limit, complete transparency. And the only way you'll get that is with oversight boards. You have this toxic national discourse, and that's how elections are. You pick your horse and you just shit on everybody else, and that's a winner-take-all election. But not a top 2 election. Take the top 2, and not a local election. Local election, these are individuals, people you see, so every single candidate who ran, every ballot question that was put on there had a substantial amount of support. Both sides had substantial amount of support. Even think of the lowest vote getter, Aisha Urin. She got over 3,000 votes, right? So over 3,000 people backed Aisha Urin. And Dottie Calhoun, she lost her, election. She was in last place, but she had 4,000 people that voted for her. So they represent a demographic. To really attack any of these candidates, you're not just saying fuck that candidate, but you're saying fuck anybody that might support them. So you just got to ask, what do each one of these candidates represent? And if you think that their main, thrust is bad, well, then you can oppose them. But victories for the progressives of the night. Sandy Gutierrez, right? We had won that a long time ago, but that was 1 progressive to 4 regressives. The incumbents were taking over power. So just based on that, the incumbents, then that means 2 of the 4 were not incumbents, right? Because thank goodness for Lori Winter and Steve Noraki stepping down. This is just like when T.J. Miller when he quit Silicon Valley. So people are saying, oh, you're ruining the show, but really he said, no, I made it better. Now the narrative, now the plot line has to continue. You don't have the incubator. You don't have the homeowner anymore. What are you going to do? You're going to get another homeowner. One of them is going to get elevated. They're going to bring in a new character. Things have to change. Something's got to change. And it's very humble. George Washington stepped down from power, whereas Ed Brown, this would be his second term, but Bob Schilling, he's been in there for, this is third and a half term now. So he doesn't step down from power. So I think it's very humble to step down from power. So I do thank you from the...
Well, thank you to the chieftain for hosting this and DCC. It's been my honor and pleasure to serve the citizens of District 3 for the last little over 4 years. I'm new to Pueblo. I didn't move here till I was 5.
That Lori Winter and Steve Noraki were humble enough that they stepped down, and since they stepped down, then the narrative has to change. So overall, Ed Brown and Bob Schilling got in there, so that's the points for the status quo, for the establishment. You know, basically, let's just keep doing the same shit we've been doing the entire time. So those would be 2 regressive votes, 2 points on the regressive side. But I would say that both Dennis Flores and Mark Aliff, in spite of them being both conservatives, they would be a progressive change because they're not the incumbent. They're not the incumbent. The narrative has to change. And even though there are only 2 people, so they're the minority, you're going to have 5 people who's part of the establishment. Well, they're not totally a monolith, right? I would say Atencio is probably the most popular on the 5 original folks, but they are going to bring something different too, and they could actually turn out to be the leader. So I think it's between Flores, Aliff, and Atencio.
My wife and kids are born here in Pueblo. It's a great community. I don't think I really appreciated Pueblo until I went into service and was in some other places around the country. We have Colorado is a great place to live, and Pueblo community is a great community.
Some respects with the school board, but Kenny O'Neill's position is actually more of a precarious position. He was anti-establishment. So as soon as he had his own independent view about things, that's when the board started ostracizing him and started doing this stupid Joyce Bales tyrannical bullshit, trying to push him out, acting like, he's not a part. Well, then you're not a part of the group. No, you're not in the cool clubs, kids, no more. You're not in the cool... and so just like Mean Girls, right? It's like a bunch of Mean Girls. And so I don't know what their political affiliation, liberal, conservative, but I do think that they do as the fuck as Charlotte Macalusa wants. And so it's an opportunity for Dennis Mays to strengthen the legislative branch. There is no judicial branch. I mean, who is the judge and jury of the school board? Essentially, it's just a principal, right? So that's just the executive branch. That's just the superintendent. Or the actual judicial branch, the 10th judicial branch. So perhaps we can get a judicial branch and strengthen up the legislative branch with Dennis. Sanchez had to step down, so therefore there was 1 seat, 1 incumbent down. Whoever gets in there, it's a progressive. And so by just that standard, which was the Sandy Gutierrez standard, it's a low standard because just because you replace somebody doesn't necessarily mean they'll be more progressive. In fact, in some respects, I mean, Lori Winter and Noel Rocky, I'm not for sure who's the Winter is very fascist, right? She wants to clean everybody's yards and tax the shit out of them or throw them in court or whatever for having, tall weeds. And while I think we do need some of that, I think that she could go too far, so I'm glad that they had checked her fascism. But then I don't know if she's liberal or conservative. I would say Noraki is left of center, so that's a Democrat, so we're losing the Democrat. And he was the leader of the court, so I would say it's probably a left of center court. And so what do we have now? Do we have a left of center court now? Yeah, we do. But with the newcomers, exactly progressive, they could be, there's, progressive Republicans, but Dennis Flores is a left of center Democrat, and then Mark Aliff is a, conservative. He's a Republican, it's Aliffism, whatever Aliff believes is, that's, he's a very independent conservative, so I think you have to really find what he means when he says conservative, when he says Republican, right? Does he want to conserve the environment? Because that's, conserve is in the name, right? Conservation of just energy, conservation of land, topsoil, all this stuff. So those are, I would say, liberal ideas, but conserve is in the name. Perhaps he thinks that, conserving the environment is a conservative position. that people define things. Stapleton thinks that the war on drugs is conserving his freedoms, conserving his personal freedoms, and so that's why he would say to change the war on drugs is a conservative idea, but I say change as a broke down the point system yet, but I'm going to. But the major victories of the night for the progressives was the squashing of the jail. Fuck that jail. Fuck that jail. That is not the direction that we should go. And so even though the voters of Pueblo went ahead and voted in favor of 2B, and they barely defeated 300, which is another progressive victory, that thing was a right-wing conservative boondoggle fuck-up. It was just not as bad. The jail was so much infinitely worse than 300, but 300 was a fascist ballot measure. And so the jail was a bigger fascist ballot measure. In fact, it was the top of the ticket. 1A, the county put this on. It was on their front page. This is the one issue the county had backed, and this actually makes me trust Gilbert Ortiz, whatever that guy's name is, Gilbert Ortiz, the county clerk and recorder, because if they had cheated, then they would have allowed their county, this ballot question to win. But the county ballot question lost. A fake noodle, an imposter. So that's an Ellen DeGeneres a joke. So overall, I haven't done the school board, but just the progressive victories. The jail lost, 300 went down. Margaret Wright did not win. Dottie Calhoun did not win. And a lot of the folks that I was actually really nervous about winning, they did not win. Dennis Mays did win, and he's an authoritarian. And Taylor Voss, I'd say, is progressive, but I don't know. I think he's there, but I had met his father, and his father seems very cold-blooded, right-wing authoritarian, and so that actually makes me think that he's going to be just as conservative as all the rest. So essentially you hope for the best, but you expect the worst. So the best case scenario, Taylor Voss gets in there and changes a whole bunch. And between the two, Taylor Voss is definitely the progressive between Dennis Mays and Taylor, but he ran very conservative. He's very, he takes his time, and I like that about him, because if he goes along with a conservative or a liberal idea, but I very much feel he feels like a conservative to me. And so he would be the most progressive in the entire court. But him and Dennis Mays are only 2 out of 5, so they're not the majority. They might just blend in and assimilate immediately. I would recommend actually to both Dennis and to Taylor to try to find some allies. The way you strengthen the legislative branch is you get other allies and you get the majority. So just like in Survivor, right, you get your little union, all you need is a majority of 3 people. So if Dennis and Taylor was to ally up, all they would need is one other person, right? They could just basically among themselves choose who the president's going to be and then elevate that person. Now you got your gang of 3. Your gang of 3 makes the school board effective, but I don't know if they'll be able to. Scoreboard. What's the scoreboard? The jail goes down. Good. That's a horrible fascist $315 million. It was just like the massacre. I had a thing set up here, so I don't get to do it now, but it was the massacre in South Korea in the 1950s. It was a tunnel massacre. All the women and children and all the people were underneath the bridge, and they just said, kill them all. And so there's about 200 or 300 innocent people just slain. I was saying blood of Englishmen is going to run on the river Styx. 315, it was $315 million. What a shit ton of fucking money. But we have all the money in the world when it comes to a goddamn fucking jail, but we don't have any money when it comes to homelessness or when it comes to a grocery store, when it comes to food stamps, when it comes to anything else. And that's ridiculous. $60 million is sitting in Pedco, and none of that can go to homelessness. We don't even have a damn homeless shelter. This is a dysfunctional government. They are not operating in the people's best interest, and $315 million, that's. Couple of quick notes. The progressive victory, Dennis Mays is a progressive victory. He's not the incumbent, and I have high hopes for him, but I also, expect the worst. Taylor Voss, also high hopes for Taylor Voss. So those both would be progressive victories. The 2 new people in the city council, Flores and Aliff, are progressive victories. And in fact, Flores and Aliff, that race is going to mimic the, mayoral race, if there is a mayoral race. But you're going to have a clusterfuck, a lot of people, then you're going to have a runoff election after the first election. So 7 people get dwindled down to 2, and then the top 2 run against each other. So if they were running for mayor, you would have Flores v. Aliff, and so they're, most fresh in people's minds. I know the way that they got mayor sold was essentially tickling everybody's ambition. Oh, Chris Nichols is going to be mayor. Oh, yeah, Tencio is going to be mayor. Oh, everybody's going to be mayor. No, only one of you motherfuckers is going to be mayor. The rest of you, a bunch of ambitious, greedy The major victories is that 300 went down, the jail went down, and then Flores and Aleph got elected, but the incumbents have already stepped down, so that was inevitably progressive anyways. So those would be progressive victors, and then you would have Taylor Voss and you would have Dennis Mays being walking in as progressives. They're not the incumbent. They will change something. But I feel like I'm afraid that Dennis Mays is just going to immediately assimilate. Yes, Charlotte Macaluso, they'll, think of their oppressive mothers, and they'll just, automatically be obedient whenever she gets upset or frustrated. Okay, sorry, Mama, don't hit me with a wooden spoon, Mama. And, I didn't have a mom like that, so that would be unfortunate if they could just, tap into that sort of trauma, that childhood trauma. But I am hopeful. So I think it's a half and half, right? Taylor Voss is more progressive than regressive. Dennis Mays is 50-50. Wright did not win, and she came close. Dottie Calhoun has 4,000 or so votes, and she didn't win. Kenneth O'Neill losing, but by 1,000 votes, or 2,000, 3,000 votes. God, so actually Taylor Voss kicked Kenny O'Neill's ass in terms of total vote, but he got a respectable 5,000 votes. And he was the anti-establishment, that was a very smart, very intelligent person, and I will suggest racism because the middle-class whites will split their vote between Taylor Voss and Dennis Mays, and the Hispanics voted for Dennis Mays. And so just being racialist, only having 2% black people in this city, the whites sided with the whites, Chicanos sided with the Chicano, and then that left Kenneth O'Neill out in the dust. That's just covert racism, but I'm sure there's overt racists around here too, right? There's only 2% black people, so that's an easy minority to attack. And I bet there's a bunch of cowardly fucking racist pieces of shit that are proud. O'Neill had just been sitting in there for 5 months, so he was the professional that the establishment. So I think it was a big loss that Kenny O'Neill did not get back in there. But is it a progressive thing? It would have been progressive if he would have got in there, but just because he didn't win, I do think he was more progressive. He was the most progressive. He was in favor of parent vouchers. He was talking about how to make money for the school, raising revenue for the school without having to raise taxes. So he was thinking outside the box. He wanted to bring solar power into public schools, but they told him that he wasn't allowed to. And then Dennis Mays acted like he broke the law and he was about to throw him in jail. So I hate that kind of fucking bullshit. He wanted to bring solar power into fucking Pueblo, and that's the goddamn fucking crime. That's not a goddamn crime. The crime would be the people that blocked solar power from coming to D60 schools. We would have saved $10 million over a span of 10 to 20 years. Why don't you want to save $10 million? You just got a bunch of fucking shit tons of money, and you just pull money out of your ass. We need to save money, and we need to raise some revenue. Kenny O'Neill would have been a huge ass. Establishment won the Bob Schilling's chair. The establishment won Ed Brown's chair, so the same incumbents got right back in there. A new kind of establishment come in with Dennis Mays and Dennis Flores, but they didn't have power, so actually they would be a progressive change at first, right? So they changed the game. They've replaced the person. They're a different human. They have a different policy, and they're going to change the entire narrative and how the board works. But how are they going to be a leader? Are they going to be a kiss-ass? Ed Brown was a Noraki kiss-ass. So my guess is he'll be a Flores kiss-ass because Noraki wanted Flores in there, and Flores seems like the older, wiser person. So I think it's going to be between Ayla, Flores, and Atencio. Atencio being the old guard, the Democrats solidifying and being, naturally sort of allies with each other because they're all Democrats. But then Aleph and Schilling's going to ally. That's already 2 votes. If they could find one more voter, they could get a Schilling winning was very regressive. Ed Brown winning was very regressive. So that's 2 points for the regressives, right? So both Flores and Aleph are progressives, and then both Mays and Voss are progressives too, but they both walk in as minorities of the current regressive establishment. So Ed Brown, that was a horrible, basically, no progressives are allowed. That's what the vote with Ed Brown versus Josh Brunn says to me. If you're a progressive, there is absolutely no room for you. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here, you stupid-ass liberals. We're sick and tired of you progressive liberals who give a shit about working-class people and unions and the environment. We don't, this is a right-wing Republican town. We vote for Donald Trump around here. We get Joyce Bales to be the superintendent. We believe in right-wing fascism, and that's just how things are. So David Galley, Obama coming to town, we fired David Galley. Very right-wing Republican town. The Democrats voted for Hillary, so they're all a bunch of fucking, neoliberal right-wing corporatists. And so that's what I think about the old establishment that just got new power. They are progressive because it changes the seat. And since they're left of center, that means they're tolerable, but they're not progressives. They're not true blue progressives. The two true blue progressives got voted down. So that's nobody. You can't give a shit in Pueblo. That's why there's no homeless shelter. And if you do give a shit around here, then they get pissed off at you as if like, what, only you think that you give a crap? No, it's not that I want people to think that I give a crap. It's that there's homeless people out here, and I want them to have a home. So I can't. I have a sense of morality. I have a sense of principles, and leaving people out on the goddamn street so they freeze to death is not. It's not Christian. It's not a good person, and it's not Jonathan Masters. It's not me. I don't like it. But apparently, if you care about the homeless, you won't get elected. So I was happy that Aisha Yerin didn't get on because she just didn't like the homeless people. She just sounded psychotic when she talked about the homeless people. She could have been a progressive. I wish I would have talked to any of these candidates about my, platform ideas. Joe Latino was a pleasant surprise. Kevin Cover was a pleasant surprise in terms of numbers, but I think he pretends that this town is progressive, so he has to trick everybody. He's a right-wing Republican conservative. And so he feels like he's got to trick everybody into pretending he's kind of progressive, but not really. Kevin Cover was a right-wing Republican. Aisha Yerin had a horrible homelessness policy. Mark Aliff switched on his homeless policy. He's not for, housing all of them, but for the kids. So for some, I think we can get 10 to 30, homes for the kids at least. So from Mark Aliff, that's a progressive. He might actually be the top progressive in. Jason Muniz is left of center, probably has good progressive credentials, but it seemed like he was embarrassed about it. So he did say he wanted a homeless shelter. He did talk about Wi-Fi, municipal Wi-Fi, but he also talked about an opera. And so he's talking about for the rich, wealthy one percenters, and he's talking about Wi-Fi for the rest of us, and he's talking about homeless shelter for the very poor of us. And he did say turn that battery station, whatever Power 5 and 6 stations into a battery and solar station, which I think is a very progressive idea. The Ed Brown said we should just condemn it. So I don't know. It's a complicated kind of I don't really even care about the issue itself, but it was something that came up and they all answered. And so Jason Muniz was left of center, so it wasn't Latino was a pleasant surprise. I enjoy listening to all of Latino's opinions now, even though he was really he was critical of Pedco, so he was absolutely right when it come to Pedco, and then he also wanted to do something about the homelessness, so he wasn't just. I am calling Flores and Aliff a progressive victory. It's barely progressive. Aliff is Republican. Dennis Flores is left of center. He's the old establishment. He's the one that hired Joyce Bales. So he believes in tyrannical, sort of executive having all the power, and he doesn't seem like he could stand up to them. And so you're not supposed to be obedient to the city manager or the superintendent. You're supposed to be a check and a partner. So you're co-equal. You're a dynamic duo. So it's equality. You all know how to work as equals? Can you respect each other's dignity and humanity? And sometimes you might disagree with each other. I hope the school board can learn to do that. But Aisha Yerin and Kevin Cover would have been worse. They would have been worse if they would have got on to council. They were not progressives. They were right-wing Republicans, very much right-wing Republicans. Latino and Muniz, they were left of center, and so they would have been, and Perez was moderate progressive. Stapleton losing was a huge shot to capitalism. So there's no capitalist and there's no socialist in Pueblo City. There's none. They're all fascist or not fascist, anti-fascist. And so which side are you on? You pro-fascism, you pro-authoritarianism, or you anti-fascist? And so that's important because Michael Stapleton believes in free market capitalism, and so that means prostitution would be legal. We wouldn't have a war on drugs, and we all could be raising marijuana gardens and sharing our spices with our neighbors, and it would be a very, liberal, progressive culture when it comes to marijuana. His drug policy would have been liberal and progressive. Michael Stapleton, when it came to war on drugs, is the only principled person against the war on drugs, and this should be a progressive issue, but if the right's going to take it, Sarah Palin says it's time to legalize marijuana. Sarah Palin's a progressive now? How come Democrats can't stand up for the right things anymore? That campaign was absolutely my favorite race because apparently it felt like to me you had a progressive and you had a libertarian and you had the establishment Republican. And so that dynamic just seems like throw out the incumbent, right? Why wouldn't you throw out the incumbent and go for a change? And most people wanted a change, but they split the vote between Stapleton and Farrell, so not enough people wanted to change, and then not enough people wanted to change, pick the right candidate. So what that just essentially, I'm glad he was in there because he was principled against the war on drugs, but more importantly, he was principled about capitalism. And so if we were true blue capitalists, you know, we would have heard more, you know, Keynesian and Milton Friedman and economists, but there was nobody talking about the economist or the economy. They weren't citing any type of, you know, right-wing economist, so they don't know about the economy. Michael Stapleton essentially showed me that we don't have enough capitalism, and then the progressives, the lack of progressives shows me that we don't have enough socialism, so we don't have capitalism or socialism. More disgusted with the Joshua Brunzed Brown race. And so overall, I actually do feel pretty jaded. So 300 went down, the jail went down, and, you know, Aisha Yerin, her homelessness, and the right-wing Republican Kevin Cover, they both went down. And if they try to say, oh, I'm an actual liberal Democrat, no, you're not. No, you're not. You're right-wing Republicans. You care about big business, you care about big money and big government, but you don't give a shit about the little people. Aisha Yerin, the two good things I'll say about her was she was in favor of the street repair tax, and she was critical of Petco, but she also hedged her bet on, well, we just need to have a meeting and talk to them and then make sure this goddamn homeless people are out of here. Kevin Cover, he's trying to trick everybody and pretend like he's thoughtful and smart and intelligent, but he admitted that he did bad in school, so I wish he would just talk like a regular person, and then we could see. He just ran to the right on everything. He was pro-Petco, and he was against the street repair tax. He was the Sandy Gutierrez was not the incumbent. She could very much be a right-wing Republican, so I would say it's a progressive change because she wasn't the incumbent, but I don't know anything about Sandy Gutierrez. So if she's a right-wing Republican, we could have got change, but we didn't. So that's a progressive victory in terms of throwing out the incumbent and getting somebody new, but if she's a right-wing Republican, then that overall was, it's a half a progressive victory, right? Progressive that we change things, so it'll change somewhat. But if there's still right-wing corporatists, pro-Pedco, pro-1%, pro-U.S. banker class, and fuck the working class and fuck the unions kind of people, you know, which side are you on, the oppressed or the oppressor? If you're on the oppressor side, fuck you. If you're on the oppressed side, then you are a comrade of mine. R. Kenneth O'Neill, right, I already said that that was he would have been the most progressive. Taylor Voss kind of is a progressive, but okay. Still fighting Big Daddy Strange, so the strong mayor thing it is not settled at all. I got a permanent injunction. It was an illegal ballot measure. I don't see how it's not an illegal ballot measure, so I need an answer. I need a response, and so far I haven't got one, so I'll just force a verdict in, I guess, tomorrow. But you have the ballot issue 1A, so the jail fucking failed. The Big Daddy Strange is still being fault, but that would be a regressive measure. That is a right-wing, totalitarian, tyrannical, illegal, anti-constitutional convention measure. Pro-police immunity. Police can do as the hell as they want to do, and the leadership is in disarray. So because 2B, we went ahead by 7,000 votes, throw a bunch of fucking police into the current paradigm, but the leadership is in disarray. So we got a runaway criminal government, but we have a lot of police doing as the fuck as they please. You're damn right. Runaway criminal leadership, and then we have a bunch of fascists running around here who have power for life. So that puts all the power in Troy Davenport's hands and Samazad. Samazad's the one that hires and fires everybody, and then he'll be in power at the very least for another year until the mayor is voted upon. So Samazad gets to hire all the people, and then so does Troy Davenport. So that's a victory for the current paradigm. I don't know Troy Davenport enough. I know he got appointed behind closed doors, behind the scenes. So he didn't have to run for office. Brian Mader didn't criticize him whatsoever. Probably jumped right on board. Oh, good decision. Great decision. Oh, really? But if he ran for office, then he'd be like, ha, 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 ha. All right, fucking Mader. And then the ballot question 2C, the street repair tax passed. I was in favor of that. So one progressive thing, right? The street repair tax. The police measure, that's a fascist thing, so that's a regressive thing. 300 went down, that's a progressive thing. The jail went. I guess if I really think about it, it wasn't that bad of a night for progressives, because I would say that throwing out the incumbents were a progressive victory, so half a progressive. I guess we'll give a half point. There's progressive, regressive, and then kind of neutral decisions, right? So we got Mark Aliff in there, so he's a progressive change because he's not Lori Winter or Noraki, so he's not the incumbent. And then experience, that's what the chief, oh yeah, experience, okay. That's not very good analysis there, Peter Roper. And then remember when Peter Roper said Mark Aliff was running for the 3rd district? Oh, yeah, Peter Roper lied for about weeks, right? For weeks, he said Mark Aliff was running for District 3, and he didn't know any better. Nobody corrected him. Nobody wanted to tell him he was fucking wrong, so everybody let his lies just dangle out there. He's an asshole. He probably wouldn't even listen to you anyways, right? He'd probably argue with you. You're trying to help the fucking guy, but he knows everything. So he lied, right? Mark Aliff didn't run for District 3, ran at large. Ballot measures, the jail went down, 300 went down, the street repair tax went up, so those three went the way I wanted them to go. The Strange mayor, Big Daddy Strange, 2B did not go the way I wanted it to go. So that would be a regressive measure, so 1 point for the regressives for 2B, 1 point for the regressives, a half a point for the Strange mayor, but then we get 3 points. The progressives, we got the street repair tax, and we squashed the jail, and we squashed the 300. So that's awesome. That's amazing. So progressive, when it comes to ballot measures, that means we won more of the ballot measures than they did. 300, went down, jail went down, street repair tax went up. So the progressives would have won with the ballot measures. And then with the, two candidates, they were brand new, so they were sort of progressive. So progressives didn't do that bad of it wasn't that bad of a night. I should actually sit down and do math and sort of figure out who won and who didn't win. But for the most part, ballot measures, progressives won. We just go straight to my heart's, discontent. There's a letter in the editor was talking about the author, Jenny Paulson, was sitting there saying that Jenny Paulson was a malcontent who was always critical of the police. Really? That's amazing. In fact, when they were kind of, Charlotte and Jenny were sort of, going back and forth, their criticisms for each other, just made me like each one of them better. So it's like, hey, you yell at public officials. You mean the corrupt ones? Well, okay, that's okay. What's wrong with yelling at the public officials? Hey, you criticize the police. We need someone to criticize. They're not perfect. They're not fucking God, right? Only God's perfect. So you're going to sit there and try to tell me that the police are perfect? So police are good, but sometimes they're not, and we should point that out when they're not. So it just seems like it made me like Jenny Paulson better. Wait, she was a liberal who criticized the police and they didn't like her? Well, then why did she have a conservative measure? If she's a progressive, why did she... They said she was a malcontent, that damn malcontent. So that fucker, Tom Carpenter was his name. That stupid motherfucker is just a fascist, right? He just wants to throw more police into the system. They are now, have power forever for the rest of their lives. If they shoot somebody, you won't be able to fire them. You won't be able to throw them in jail. So they have basically absolute power forever. Strange mayor gives them immunity. So now they got absolute power. The 200 or 300 cops, the 250 cops now? So the 250 cops that's going to be in Pueblo City have absolute fascist power to do as the fuck as they please. Absolute fascist power. So that's not a victory whatsoever. There was only 2 out of the 7 that was changed, 2 out of the 5 that was changed for the city council and for the school board. So it wasn't a progressive revolution. We only got 2 of the 4, so that means 5 of the 7 stay the same, 3 of the 5 stay the same, and then the same superintendent, same city manager. So where are the progressives at? Bruns was the most progressive, kind of unabashedly progressive. He was talking about worker cooperatives. He was talking about oversight panels. He was talking about using new technology, contract crafting, waste-to-energy programs, solar trees to increase the walkability, decrease the crime. So he was talking about a lot of, incredible progressive measures. But the District 1 absolutely hates progressives whatsoever. They are against progressives. They're against liberals. That's another reason. You want to know why we're conservative? Look at Ed Brown fucking beat the shit out of a true blue progressive. The only single fucking progressive. The only progressive, true blue progressive. Charlotte Perez was a moderate progressive, but that's it. So where are the Josh Brunses and the Charlotte Perez's in government? It's not in the county government, not in the city government, not in the school board. We don't have any progressives. 0. We have 0 progressives in our government right now. 0. And that doesn't make me feel happy. Progressives have, got a victory here and there, little victories, little half progressives, little left of center folks. And there are some incumbents that changed, essentially 5 of 7. So Bob Schilling, Ed Brown, Larry Atencio, Aguilera, and, the other one, they all can join in. And it's the same old gang. They can make all the same decisions and just cut, the 2 new people out. They could do the exact same thing with the school board. That's why they got to get some allies when they walk in there. And they got to strengthen up the legislative branch. But if the old guard, if they get their union first, if they consolidate their power before they do, then that means the city council is going to be doing the same shit that they were doing before. The school board is going to be doing the same shit that they were going to do before. And the only change now is we got more cops into the mix. and then we're changing our entire form of government, which was it's a Democrat that's doing it, but it's ignoring the Charter Convention, and it's fucking bullshit. It's it's a fascist measure. Street repair tax. So the Big Daddy Strange is pro-fascist, 2B is pro-fascist. The jail going down is great. 300 going down is great. Street repair tax. That seems to be the only changes that's actually progressive. We got a street repair tax, so we're going to get, green diamond encrusted golden streets. And I doubt if I'll even get it. I'm in favor of it. A little bit of tax to fix our streets. Yeah, it's probably going to be Union Avenue. It's going to be, Lake Avenue. So all these rich business fucking communities are going to get their goddamn streets fucking paved, and then they're going to ignore the residentials when it was the business people that was against this shit. They were against the fucking shelter. Lake Avenue doesn't give a shit. Yeah, they stopped the shelter. And Bob Schilling stopped the recycling center. So it's like they're against progress. They're against capitalism. They're against socialism. They're just pro-fucking fascist. And so that just, I feel jaded. I feel essentially most of the things are the exact same. Some things are worse. The strange mayor is the worst thing.
I've been working with the other council to move Pueblo forward.